Straight
You are now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all of this together to a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, techniques, and mindsets, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is how to be more resilient. And I'll get into where and why that topic is the topic, where it's coming from, where we're going with it in a moment. First of all, let me tell everybody that I send out a daily motivation text message every single morning that I will send straight to your phone free of charge. It's like any other text message that you get, but this one will be actually of substance, and it will, all you got to do to get it is to text me in my number, which is 305-384-6894. Just send me a text at that number. You can send that text right now, and every day you'll be getting that daily motivation message, guaranteed to keep you focused, sharp, and on point. And you can, if you wish, respond to any one of those text messages, and I will write you back. That is me who handles those texts. So that number again, 305-384-6894. Now the topic, how to be more resilient. First of all, let's get a definition of what this word resilient means. And with the definition, then you'll know exactly why this is an important subject in the work on your game world. The definition is able to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions. So resilience is, it actually can go under the umbrella of primarily, I will put this under mental toughness. That ability to keep showing up, doing the work, and putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to occur. Usually when we're putting in the time, we're putting in the effort, we're believing in ourselves, we're following some type of program or plan or system, whether created by ourselves or someone else, and things are not working, usually that creates some kind of difficulties in our minds if it's not a difficulty that's physically. Because, I mean, what if I or anyone else gave you a plan and said, all right, this plan works, just follow this plan, you're going to get the results that you want, and you follow the plan and you're not getting the results that you want, that will probably lead to some difficult conditions. It might lead to some difficult thoughts in your mind. Again, if it's not a difficult, something difficult that is physically in front of you, it might lead to some difficult thoughts like, wait a minute, why is this not doing what the instructions said it was going to do? Why am I not getting the same outcomes that the other person who followed this system was getting? Why is this not getting me to where I thought it was going to get me? And this might challenge your discipline. You might not be willing to stay disciplined on something that is not producing the result that you want. I mean, we all know the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, but you're not getting it, then maybe it'd be crazy for you to keep following it. It'd be hard to stay confident working on something when the results that you have expected to get from doing that thing are just not showing up. So how can you be resilient enough to withstand the difficulty of possibly things not working out, possibly a wrench getting thrown in your plan when you're expecting things to go right, but they actually go left? How can you withstand the difficult conditions of just unwanted surprises, not the surprises that you want, but the surprises that you don't want, and you having to deal with them? We all know that we can call this life, that just random stuff sometimes just occurs in life. How can you deal with all of this? How do you become, how do you stay a resilient individual? That's what we're going to talk about here today. Point number one, topic once again, is how to be more resilient. Number one, stop allowing yourself to be a biatch. Let me say that again. Stop allowing yourself to be a biatch. And yes, allow is a key word in that sentence there. You choose whether or not you're going to, and when I say biatch, it's just a slang term for being a bitch. Stop allowing yourself to be a bitch. And if you don't know what I mean when I say being a bitch, I talked about in episode 1387. The title is How to Not Be a Bitch. If you don't know what that means, go listen to the episode. You probably have an idea of what that means when I say how to not be a bitch. I also talked about in episode 86. The topic is Stop Whining Bitch. So if you don't know what it means, go listen to those two episodes and you'll know exactly, you'll have the context for what I mean in this first point here today. And the key word in that sentence is not the word bitch, but the key word is allowing. It is a choice to allow yourself to feel weak, to feel ineffective, to feel impotent, to feel as if you cannot have some impact on a circumstance. That is a choice. is a decision that you get to make on a day-to-day basis, on a moment-by-moment, case-by-case basis. When something that you didn't want occurs, when someone does something that was completely unexpected, when a situation was going well but now is not going so well, you have a choice as to whether you're going to feel weak and naked about the situation and powerless about the situation, or if you're going to feel like, you know what, I'm going to handle this situation, I'm going to do something about the situation, I'm going to make something out of this situation and get it going, or at least get it back going in a direction that it's supposed to be going in. Understand that difficult conditions, everyone, is not an aberration in life. Everyone is going to face difficult conditions at some point. And as a matter of fact, if you think about it, and some of you may need to think for a very long time, some of you might not need to think hard at all. If you think about it though, there is something going on in your life right now that is indeed a difficult condition. Maybe you're not thinking about it. Maybe it's not so high on your priorities list that you need to do anything about it right now at this moment. But no one ever has everything in their life perfect all at the exact same time, except maybe a newborn baby, maybe for the first couple months. But as soon as they get old enough that they can walk and talk and think, then they start having problems too. All right. So, and we all keep having them until we die. Only people out there really with no problems are people who are dead. So difficult conditions are not an aberration of life. It is just something that is going to come up. And as the old saying goes, you're either just getting out of a problem, you're in the midst of a problem, or you're on your way into a problem, whether you know about it or not. Now, while we don't want to have to deal with difficult conditions all the time, even people who are, they have that warrior mindset, the kind of people who go jump in the ocean when it's 20 degrees outside, even though they may like dealing with those things because they feel like it makes them tougher. Right? Nobody's going around looking for them and necessarily wanting to be in them all the time. But at the same time, it is to be expected that things will not always go according to plan. And knowing this, we will have to make our adjustments. Even if that adjustment is just changing the way that we think about a situation because we can't physically do anything materially about the circumstance. Knowing that 99% of life is outside of our controls, many times the only adjustment we can make is just changing the way we think about a certain situation because that's all we can do. The better prepared you are mentally and emotionally for this truth, knowing that perfect plans will not always go perfectly, the less it will throw you off and the less chance that you respond to the situation like a bitch when it does happen, because it is going to happen. And again, I would say 78% of you who are listening to this right now, you're in the midst of a challenging, difficult situation right now where you actually need the resilience. So the better mentally you understand that this is not an aberration, it's not something to feel, woe is me, like life is victimizing you in any way, and just understanding this happens to everybody, it just happens to be happening to you right now, then you can accept it better. It's easier for you to accept it that this is just something you got to deal with. This is just the way life goes. We just call this life. This is not the world is all against you. It's just life. Louis Seneca, in one of my favorite books called Letters from a Stoic, he didn't write it as a book. He literally just wrote a bunch of letters, but they were all compiled into this book. It's called Letters from a Stoic, Stoic, and it is the foundation of the concept of Stoicism. Any of you have read any philosophy books? Robert Greene, Ryan Holiday is another one who writes about this a lot. This is the concept of Stoicism. You don't know what it is, look it up. But in his book, he says the following, and I'm going to quote this, and I pulled many quotes from this book because I liked it so much. So he says this, quote, "You say, I feel severe pain. What then? Are you relieved from feeling it if you endure it like a woman? Just as an enemy is more dangerous to a retreating army, so every trouble that fortune brings attacks us all the harder if we yield and turn our backs." Close quote. Now, to put that into more modern language, the first thing he's saying is when you feel pain, do you get relieved from the pain if you become a biatch and whine and bitch about it? Of course not. He says if you endure it like a woman. Now, he wrote that, this is way before woke and politically correct times. And he's a man. He's writing his letter to another man. And he's saying, he's basically comparing the way that any man who feels pain enduring it like a female, in other words, bitching about it, is not a positive quality. Now, it doesn't make the pain go away just because you're bitching and whining about it. And at the same time, he says, anytime that you have trouble coming your way, if you turn your back and don't face the trouble, it just makes it even worse. So deal with the situation as it is. That is resilience in a nutshell. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is how to be more resilient. Assess and identify. This is the second thing that you do. When you find yourself in a challenged space, again, some of you are in this right now, ask yourself the following question. Where did things go off course and why did it happen? Now, again, asking yourself where this happened and why it happened is not necessarily about you taking blame for the situation, but it is about you taking ownership and responsibility over the situation. And let me tell you why that matters, taking responsibility and ownership over the situation, because you can't always control, as I said, what happens, why it happened, and how it happened. But one thing that you can control is that you can do something about the situation as it is. And probably the more you know about the source of the challenge, the difficult condition, the more you can do about it. Even if the only thing you can do is change your mindset about it, at least when you know where it's coming from, it'll probably help you better to compartmentalize the situation as it is and put it in its proper place in your mind. I think I have an episode on the show where I talked about compartmentalization. That was episode number 1362, how to compartmentalize. For those of you who are not familiar with that phrase, don't know what it means, go check out episode 1362, which is located down below in the show notes. It's linked down below in the show notes. Or you can just go to workonyourgamepodcast.com, and right there on that page, you can listen to episode 1362. So just pull it up. You can listen to it right there. So assessing and identify is really just trying to figure out what is the source of the situation. And maybe you can do something about it when you identify the source. Maybe you can't, and all you can do is change your mindset, which is actually doing something as well. But there's always an answer to this question. When things go off course, there's always a reason why things went off course, as long as there is a course. Now, for those of you who are out there flying by the seat of your pants and you don't really have a plan for what you're doing, you're just randomly doing stuff. Now, if things go off, well, there is no way for things to go off course because there was no course. But as long as there is a course, then there's a way for you to figure out why and how things went off course, and that means you can do something about the situation. So the question you need to ask yourself is, first of all, is there a course? Is there a plan to be followed? And then when things are not going according to that plan, you can quickly identify that because you know what the plan is and how things are supposed to go. So you can weigh the current situation against what is actually happening. Then you'll know something's off, and now you can identify why that thing is off. So find it and adjust. Get help if you need to get help. There's nothing wrong with getting help from someone else. This is what smart people do. So the smartest people out there do not try to do everything by themselves simply because they don't have every skill. They don't have enough time. They don't have enough hands and enough brains to do everything by themselves. So they enroll other people to help them get things done. It is not a sign of weakness to get help from other people. It's actually a sign of intelligence. When you can identify the source of difficulties, you are better positioned to handle those difficulties and possibly prevent recurrence of said difficulties. That's a simple enough idea, is it not? Give you an example. As an athlete, any of you don't have to be an athlete like on a sports team or anything, but if any of you ever had a physical ailment and you don't know where that physical ailment came from, let's say your knee is bothering you, or you lift weights often and your shoulder starts hurting, or you like to run outside and you're having some trouble with your back, or your hips are giving you pains, or you keep getting heartburn every time you eat dinner, or at least once a week you eat dinner and then you get heartburn. It's hard for you to go to sleep, or something's going on with your digestion. Isn't it smart? Wouldn't it be smart for any of us? And you don't have to be an athlete or a doctor or a scientist to think about this one. Wouldn't it be smart for you to figure out, all right, what is causing this issue? What is causing me to have this problem over and over and over again? For example, I'm a person who eats mostly plant-based, and meals I get delivered are plant-based, but I found that when I eat, I found this out a few years ago, that when I eat quinoa, it's hard for me to digest it. It's hard for it to even go down my digestive tract. And I get this kind of, I don't even know what heartburn exactly feels like, but it's kind of like that. It doesn't all the way go down the pipe, and I just don't like the taste of it. I don't like the consistency of it. So I tell my meal delivery service, do not put any quinoa in my meals. And they like quinoa. So anytime they have quinoa, they sub that out and they put something in mine like bulgur wheat or rice or something like that. And the whole point of me sharing that is to let you know, when I noticed this discomfort that I was feeling in my body anytime I ate a meal, I asked myself, what is the common denominator of this happening? And it was the quinoa. So now I just banned quinoa from my meals, and now I don't have that problem anymore. Give you another example. Years ago, this is probably about 10 years ago, I still to this day like to run outside. But about 10 years ago, I used to always go to Miami Beach. and I would run outside, like literally on the actual beach, on the sand. And I would run right there on the edge of the water. And at different times of year, any of you who's a beach bum, you would know this. At different times of the year, when the tide is in or out, you can run along the edge of the water, and it'll be very flat sand because that's where the water is always hitting. But the water is the tide is out, so you can run it's just sand. But then later on, at different times of the year, the water is coming in, so the sand, you have to run on the part where the sand is a little bit thicker. But anyway, I would run on that sand. And it was always an interesting run, because when you're running on the edge of the sand in Miami Beach, the weather's nice, and there's always all kinds of people out there. So there's all different kinds of things that you see, and you're also being seen at the same time. But I noticed that I was starting to have some issues with my knee, because I was still playing basketball at this time. And my trainer, Maria, when I was telling her what I was doing, she said to me, you should probably stop running on the sand, because the thing about sand, any of you who's ever been to a beach in your life, you understand that sand is a very uneven surface. And if you're running on it, then you're kind of in just very small microscopic ways twisting your knee in all different directions and on different planes every single time you take a step. So imagine running 4 or 5 miles on that a few times a week. You're really putting a lot of wear and tear on your knee, on top of the fact that you're playing basketball, which really beats the shit out of your knees. So when I stopped running on sand, all of a sudden I stopped having knee problems. So assessing and identifying what is actually causing the difficulty might